second, yeah.
Great, and our next speaker is Tom Harwood. Tom, thanks very much. Over to you.
Thank you. I think that Paris is the most important place to start in terms of my speech. It's the example that's happened most recently, and so it's also the one that we remember the most about. The main facts about the attack, a couple of months on, is that around 130 people were killed, with 89 people killed in the Vatican. The backlash is pretty immediate. It only took 2 days for the French to start bombing targets in Syria. And now Britain's in Syria too, because we support France's allies. I'm not saying that it was a bad thing to support France like this, but for me, I think we rushed it in a bit too quickly. That said, it was completely understandable. It must have felt good to hit back against something that must have hurt and shocked a great deal of French families. But it couldn't have been any more predictable in the way that the Western governments reacted. And somewhat similarly, the problems that are occurring around the world in relation to radical Islam may be somewhat more exacerbated when they happen in Western countries. When you become more aware of problems outside the Western sphere, when something really nasty happens. So, for example, like this. Sadly, that little boy had to die to make us notice, temporarily, the refugee crisis. It's died down again further. And so now it seems we're waiting for another death or massacre for it to be brought back into the public eye. So the picture on the right was taken in London, and the one on the left was taken from the aftermath of the Tunisia shootings early last year. These type of pictures come up a lot in the media, and usually start appearing when a debate starts being stirred up. These photos will naturally stir up some kind of fear in us. And the only way to challenge this is by showing images from the other side. Evidence from a survey showed that over half of British people believe that Islam clashes with British values, which doesn't make sense in itself, because British values are immigrants and multiculturality. So, yes, what we don't see. The one on the left is from Oklahoma, and the one on the right is from a march in Kurdistan, which shares its largest borders with Iraq, Iran, and also some with Syria. The Oklahoma photo was taken from a march to promote tolerance of the community after the Republican Party started to target the Muslim minority in the country. Why is it we don't see more of this thing though? Surely we make everyone feel much more comfortable and be less intolerant when it comes to Muslims. It certainly need to do us more. One story is that on the day of 9/11, a Muslim family was kicked out of their apartment following the attack. But what's strange is that they had been living in that building for around 7 years. You would have thought that their neighbours would have recognised that a family of four would have been unlikely accomplices. The one on the right happened in Kurdistan, a largely Muslim country. Again, why are we not seeing more of these protests? ISIS is a fringe and radical organisation that markets terror very well. And it seems, at least to me, that all the scary executions are more important to the media, and are more important to the media than the efforts to actually stop it, done by the people closer to it than us. So perhaps I've phrased that a bit weirdly, but it's important to address Paris for what it is. In the wake of Paris, huge amounts of Muslims have been writing and tweeting and posting and talking about how ISIS is not what Islam stands for, and it's not what Islam really means. The most fervent critics now, following Paris especially, have been moderate Muslims, and that's amazing. It's what we really need to see. And all over Twitter especially, you have hashtag #NotInMyName, which is usually when something has been misspoken about in terms of Islam and the way it's been represented. And so with Paris, I think it was necessary in a way for tragedy to occur to allow for a greater discussion of the issue. Some of us, either at school, people who we know, people in our family, people all over the country have something to say on Islam. It's understandable though. It's a question which causes arguments, and I'd say rightly so. Talking about it helps everyone understand it better. On the other hand, some of us may have people who we know who are Muslim and who think of no one less likely to be an angry, upward Sharia law protester who roots with the guys who killed Lee Ruby. As of 1.57 billion Muslims, only around 0.003% would support ISIS. Not even fight for them, just approve. What I feel, I am wary, but no more than I am with someone who supports UKIP. It's slightly confusing to me, but then again, I'm pretty atheist. I don't really have too much understanding of many religions. What I want is more clarity. I want to hear more opinions about the matter, so you hear the facts come out and you make your own decision. Someone to blame. These are the people who have the means to change their opinion. I mean, the media holds the most sway with us, obviously. And we obviously naturally trust newspapers, which just that's something that's ingrained in our society. But we have to question what they say. ISIS, they'll continue to try and make people afraid of them. And that's their point. They're terrorists and not an army, despite what they'd like to have you believe. Their goal is to coerce governments into thinking they're a larger threat than they possibly are. Governments are the ones who will be making decisions for us. And whether people should be afraid, they are effectively in charge of what happens. Whether we go in with armed troops or not and start hurling Western technology against Eastern infrastructure, which was never going to work. It could be a huge mistake, and so it's important that they get it right. Moderate Muslims, as I said, especially after Paris, that they've got more kind of vocal in their opinion. But especially after Charlie Hebdo, they weren't as loud as they could have been. There weren't many huge protests that you would see in, say, Paris or other places that showed that it wasn't in their name. Then again, maybe it wasn't that the media showed them correctly. Somewhat I counter my argument. Maybe we shouldn't question if there is someone to blame. It's too late. Let's just focus on amending any issues to make sure there are no more stupid mistakes, because there have been enough already. It creates more anguish and pain, especially for those close to the areas of conflict. Let's just concentrate on the issue of dealing with the fear which is pervasive, which happens everywhere in the country, especially in Western Europe and in America. Is this relevant to us, and should it be relevant to us? I've used the word relevance in terms of time. We are at a stage where more important decisions are being made about what to do, with comparatively little understanding about the other hand side. There are only 13 Muslim MPs in the Parliament. So really we're not hearing a huge voice inside the policymaker chamber. We are the next generation who will have to make the decisions. We need to make sure we understand both sides of the story. That is, if this is still unfortunately an issue. Really, I think it should be in a way. It's something that needs to constantly be talked about, even after it's fixed. We need to have something which is remembered. There will always be people who are afraid of religion and people who are afraid of Muslims especially. And when you hear them in the media, when you hear them just outside of this room, I'd say you just have to kind of accept that they're saying it. Challenge them if they are being hateful and might be causing or inciting violence, but ignore it. It's there. It's not going to affect you too much. Hopefully it does change. We need to be the ones that people use as examples when it comes to looking at terms of behaviour. And thank you very much for listening.